The days are longer, the calendar is filling up, and I want to feel as good as this beautiful summer weather. That's why I've been loving Groons. It's one daily pack of gummies that covers my greens, vitamins, and minerals, and even has 6 grams of prebiotic fiber. So I don't need to juggle a complicated wellness routine on top of everything else. They taste amazing. They're easy to toss in my bag on the go. Plus, they're vegan, gluten free, and HSA, FSA eligible for reimbursement. Save up to 52% off with promo code podcast at gruns.co. That's code podcast at gruns.co.
Welcome back to the show. This is Wooden Sticks. We are broadcasting today from the Aquarius Home Services studio, and want to say a quick hello to one of our newest members at Talk North. A lot of fans here in town, especially if you've been connected to the Twins or the Wild over the years, know the name Andrew Height. We call him Whitey. He is just a sweetheart of a guy. And Karen Clary is off to retirement, and they found the perfect person to fill those big shoes. And Andrew Height is now going to be in charge of a lot of things at our podcast network, including advertising. And so when you hear me give you the cue as our listeners to make that connection and maybe find some folks that have a business in town that needs a step up or needs extra advertising, we have a new connection. And that is to Whitey. That is to Andrew Height. His email is aheydt@talknorth.com. aheight@talknorth.com. Welcome, Whitey. Really looking forward to working with him. He was fantastic in his time with the Wild. We did a lot of traveling together, had a lot of fun. Went to some Broadway shows, toured a bunch of cities, a bunch of great dinners. This guy gets things done, and he's a huge addition for us at Talk North. And for all of us in the hockey world, it's been a tough week. And as everybody knows, the hockey community is a tight-knit bunch, and we try to take care of each other. What happened last Thursday night and into Friday with Johnny Gaudreau and his brother being hit by a drunk driver on their bike ride home from their sister's groom's dinner is something that I think really touched a lot of people in this world, and really a lot of people are hurting right now. And so I thought it was at least timely and maybe somewhat healing to connect with somebody that had a relationship with Johnny Gaudreau, that covered him as a hockey player, one of my great friends in the business. And that's Dave Maetzold down in Ohio, working for Bally Sports, covering the Jackets now for this will be his 15th year. He's tremendous at the job. He could not be a better human being, honestly. Every time that we play Columbus, it's my favorite part of the matchup is having that conversation with Dave at morning skate and then connecting throughout the game. It's protocol in the league to connect and go over some of the storylines, but he's got distinct ties to Minnesota, went to college down in Eau Claire, and big Vikings fan, big Twins fan. We talk sports, we talk life. Our career paths are very similar. We're kind of the last of the weekends a little bit. We're older dudes in that reporter role. So, we've got a ton in common, and he just honestly is one of those people I have so much respect for. And I just love our time together when we're able to connect throughout the season. And so the fact that Dean Evason is the head coach, this was already on my radar. The fact that we opened up in October, the Wild host the Blue Jackets, this was something I was planning on doing a little closer to the start of the season. But with the tragic occurrence last week, I thought this would be a decent time to have Dave on the show and to kind of get a feel for what things are like right now, as we've seen the memorials being built up both in Columbus at Nationwide Arena and up in Calgary at the Saddle Dome. I'll be honest, I didn't have a ton of interaction with Johnny Hockey. I was a fan. I loved watching him play, going back to his college days at Boston College. And there were a couple of scrums up in Calgary, maybe one scrum down in Columbus, where I was one of 6, 7, 8, 9 people holding a microphone asking him questions. So a typical superstar holding court at morning skate. Couldn't have been any more cordial, had a big smile on his face, seemed to love what he was doing. Um, again, just an awful story, and one that I wish we weren't talking about, one that I didn't, want to get into. But for Dave and I today, I think it'd be great to shed some light on that and talk about the impact he had on that community and that hockey team and how the Blue Jackets move forward. And I got to tell you, Dean Evason, being a friend of mine and somebody that I thoroughly enjoyed covering, I hope I can impress upon David. He probably knows this already in the little time he's been around. Coach Evason he's a great coach, but he's a better human. And I think he'll do a phenomenal job at bringing that team together. Dean comes across, you guys that have watched him on our broadcasts over the years when he was the coach here in Minnesota saw that intensity, that look in his eyes, that steely, I want to punch you in the mouth type of look on his face. Super intense, fierce competitor, but behind closed doors, could not have been a better person to connect with people and bring people together. And I think that's what Columbus needs right now. So we'll talk a little bit about Dean Evason. We'll talk about the similarities in these two organizations and how they're both so, I think, starving as a fan base for a cup run. Both great sports cities. Both cities, I would say, probably run by their football teams. For Columbus, it's the Buckeyes. For us, we know here in Minnesota, the Vikings are the big dog, and maybe how the hockey teams in the near future can use some of that young talent they have to change that landscape a little bit, kind of like the Timberwolves did last year. So we're going to talk Johnny hockey. We're going to pay tribute to a great that was lost at age 31. We're going to get into the Dean Evason angle, and of course, Blue Jackets and Wild, who open up the season on October the 10th, which is just about a month away right now, which is hard to believe. And that is coming up today on Wooden Sticks. I got to give a quick shout out to my guy, John Schweitz, giant supporter of our podcast here. He and I will be doing another podcast later tonight. It's more of a charitable one called The Kindness Chronicles. We just had Paul Allen on last week to talk about some of the great charity work that PA has done over at Canterbury with the folks that live on the backside. And thank you to John and the Masons for being a part of our show. Minnesota Masonic Charities would prefer that, you remember how they impact all of us in our community, whether it's the Masonic Cancer Center at the U of M, the Children's Hospital, or the Masonic Home in Bloomington. Just a few examples of the important work that Freemasons support in Minnesota. They're the largest fraternal organization in the world, and they have consistently answered the call when it comes to charitable needs. And it's great to have John Schweitz and all those great Masonic charities involved in our show. It'll be extra great to have Dave Maetzold on from Valley Sports, Ohio, after this quick break. All right, we're back on Wooden Sticks, and we are doing this from the Aquarius Home Services studio. Really excited to have one of my cohorts on today, Dave Maetzold. He works with Valley Sports Ohio, covering the Columbus Bluejackets. I've known him for the better part of my 2 decades on the job, and we're on the cusp of another hockey season, Dave, and I'm looking forward to seeing you opening night.
Opening night at the X with our new head coach who came from, let me think. Oh, yeah, Minnesota. This is going to be fun.
It's almost like the schedule makers know what they're doing. I mean, that Dean gets his new gig, and I think we see you guys twice in the opening 10 days of the season, including opening night. And I know right now it's fairly timely to have you on specifically for the tragedy that was last week with Johnny Gaudreau. And, I'll be honest, I've only had a couple of interactions in my time covering the NHL with him, and they were media scrums. You know the drill, right? As a reporter, you go in there and you're trying to get sound. Could not have been a nicer guy. Always had a smile on his face. And, he played 2 years with you guys in Columbus. You probably got to know him pretty well. How did the news hit you last week?
Like a baseball bat in the stomach. It just real tough, especially with what this franchise has been through. Jonas Corposalo just a couple of years ago. And but this is a whole separate thing because of the layers of tragedy involved, and just such a tight hockey family. Everybody's read about it now, how tight the Gaudreaus are. his mom and dad would be at so many games. His dad would be right down there in the Zamboni tunnel, like he was coaching his midget team. He'd be down there in a hoodie, just like he was coaching his 8-year-old, and just real tragic. And I feel so badly for that family because of how close I know they are.
In the hockey world's a tight knit bunch, and you and I have lived this now for a long time covering this league, and it's amazing to me. And I'm not surprised, but I'm always blown away by the amount of support that you see league wide. These guys go out there and go to battle, and I mean, they battle every single night. They go out there, they're trying to run the other guy through the wall. But when situations arise like this, where there's some trauma, when there's some tragedy, it doesn't matter what team you're on. These guys are all family. And I really, it does warm my heart to see the way this league and the way these players embrace each other.
It's something that I've looked at really since I've been involved with the NHL is the genuine modesty of the players, the genuine politeness of the players, the class of the players. And it puts them in a different category, I think, than most other professional athletes. And the reason for that, I believe, is because of family. I had an old producer, actually, Kev, who was a Toronto guy, and he said, I think it's because you can't just go to a rink by yourself. You can't just go to a tournament by yourself. You're going with a family. You're going with another dad or another mom. You're loading up the SUV and you're heading off to Brainerd, or you're heading off to Alexandria, or you're heading off someplace, and you're going as a family. And I think, that's a big part of why these players are the way they are.
Dave, in our line of work, we see these unbelievable hockey players. I'll use Kirill Kaprizov as the example. He's got this amazing smile. He's got the great personality. Reminded me a lot of, the little I knew of Johnny Hockey, Johnny Gaudreau. What was your guy like, Johnny, behind the scenes to work with?
Well, it's funny. I got a bit of a heads up on his personality from Eric Robinson, who played with the Blue Jackets for a while now, is in the Carolina organization. Both Eric Robinson and his brother grew up as kids playing against Johnny Gaudreau and Matty Gaudreau, his brother, who also passed last week. And Eric Robinson said, look, I don't know what you expect here with Johnny coming to town, but he's not the kind of guy who's going to seek out the spotlight and be that automatic go-to soundbite. He's going to talk to the media for sure, but he's really kind of a reluctant superstar and not the kind of guy who seeks that out. So he always was very good with his media scrums, both pre and post game. And, he'd show a little bit of his personality, but he was there, to do a job, and the media was kind of a part of that job, in the way he spoke with us. So wasn't real outgoing, wasn't a big personality by any stretch of the imagination, but always cordial and always had time for us.
So the group, and it's funny when you work in our, area, kind of near the locker room, near the bench, on the team bus, at practice, on the team charter, you get to know the personality of the guys. And as you look at this now on the cusp of training camp starting, it's going to be, I think, a real challenge for this group of players. How do you think they're equipped to handle it? How will the process work, and how healing will just be getting together as a team and coming to training camp as a group?
Yeah, really good question, and very timely, because we just heard from the players, earlier today. They had the captains speak: Boone Jenner, Zach Werenski, Sean Corrali, and Eric Goodbranson. And each of them, especially Eric Goodbranson, who also played with Johnny in Calgary, spoke about his sense of humor and the way he would bring that sense of humor, a unique brand of his sense of humor, kind of a prankster, a jokester, a guy who would always, try to get one up on you. And he would try to bring that into the room and on the bus and on the plane and in the hotels on the road and that kind of stuff. And that's, to a man, each one of those four players, that's what they're going to miss the most is that side of Johnny. Goodbranson told a funny story about the fact that Eric Goodbranson, is very punctual. He hates to be late. He hates to be late. He hates to be late. And every time he would try to get a ride with Johnny, Johnny would show up at his house 7 minutes late on purpose just to drive him crazy. And it was, that kind of stuff. Like, okay, we're going to get there, but we're not going to get there exactly on Eric Goodbranson time, which everybody got a good laugh out of and got a good picture of the kind of character that Johnny could be.
Well, I got to tell you, I've done this for almost 2 decades, and Dean Evason is as quality a human being as I've come in contact with. And, Dean comes across as very stoic, very intense, and he's all of that. And he's a fierce competitor. But what I know about Coach Evason is how much he truly cares about his players behind the scenes. And I do believe that he's the right coach for this type of setting, which it is going to be hard. There are going to be a lot of emotions involved, Dave. I don't know how well you've gotten to know Dean, even over the years covering him when he was coaching our club with Minnesota, but I got to tell you, I think he's a really good fit for your group and moving forward, some of the young talent you have.
It's the exact way I described him. I had probably a 10 or 12-minute interview with him on the day he was hired. And that's the exact way I described him to other people, was a good fit for where our organization is right now. They need a guy who's going to get them back to a certain level of discipline and a higher level of expectation, which the players were saying has been missing for the last couple of seasons. I don't think there's any question that Dean's going to bring that. But I think he's also going to bring an understanding of what it's like to be a player, what it's like to go through that grind of an 82-game season and being together all the time. And he's going to try and pull this team together in that regard. Very interesting. Some of his comments in his introductory press conference, a couple of them that stood out, one of which was, he was asked about Columbus, and he said, look, I think Columbus is a fine city. It's going to be a great place to live, but I didn't come here to experience the city. I didn't come here to experience the Columbus Zoo. I came here to win hockey games. That's my job. We're going to live downtown. We're going to live close to the arena, and we're going to come and win hockey games. And I really think that was the exact right thing to say to this fan base, which has been so hungry for a winner for so long.
And there are special moments within every season. And I look at your schedule, and Dean coming back to Minnesota on opening night is going to be really cool. But I look at March 1st and the Stadium Series and Ohio Stadium, home of the Buckeyes, which is just an iconic college football stadium. That's going to be, I would imagine, an extraordinary night for the organization.
Kev, I think every time you come here, you talk about the shoe and how great it is. And it really is. I mean, it's such a spectacular, iconic building. And just, it's a historic college football cathedral is what it is. And people here have been saying for at least 15 of the team's 24 years, when are they going to get an outdoor game? When are they going to play in the shoe? When are they going to play the Red Wings, which is the obvious choice to have come in as an opponent? Everyone is so excited about that opportunity on March 1st. Red Wings coming to town, a couple of teams that are really kind of on the rise, I think, in terms of where they're going to be this year and next year and in the future. And really looking forward to that game finally happening in that building. It's going to be special.
And for hockey fans that are looking at the Blue Jackets and understanding the tragedy that is losing a player of the talent on the ice of Johnny Gaudreau, and then knowing that Patrick Laine has packed up and moved over to Montreal, where do you think the offense comes from this year? Because I think under Dean Evason, you're going to be great without the puck. You're going to defend, and if you get goaltending, you're going to be in every game. But you're going to have to find a way to score goals playing in your conference, because there are a lot of high-scoring teams in the East.
Right. And the first place I'm going to look is to Adam Fantilli, whose rookie season was cut short last year. Adam Fantilli and the Russian winger Kirill Marchenko, who I'm telling you, man, this guy's going to get on his game, and he's going to be a name in the National Hockey League. I think he's going to make a big difference. Boone Jenner's going to move back to the wing, which is probably a better thing for him. It's a better opportunity for him. That creates opportunities for another young centerman by the name of Cole Sillinger, who had a great rookie season, then fell back in his sophomore season and kind of found it again last year. So those are just some of the names that I think are going to be impactful. Sean Monahan comes over as a free agent as well. And you talk about the layers of this Gaudreau tragedy. Monahan and Gaudreau obviously teamed up for some really exciting moments in Calgary. Monahan's game slipped back. He feels like he's got it back to where he needs to have it now, and was really looking forward to being reunited with Johnny. And now he's going to have to find that chemistry with someone else. And obviously very hopeful that he can do that. But at the same time, it's bittersweet with Johnny not going to get that opportunity.
Yeah, I got to tell you, there's been a lot of tough stuff to watch on social media, and the video of Monahan and Johnny Hockey in Calgary celebrating some of their great wins together. Man, as a guy that loves the passion these guys bring every night and the relationships that they foster and team chemistry that you know was there with those two guys, that just is, it's a gut-wrenching part of this story for sure.
Yeah, it really is. And Monahan's going to have to find his way now. I mean, Johnny was going to be the guy who kind of introduced him to the franchise and the rest of the players, and now he's going to have to find his way by building his own relationships, which is going to make that just a little bit more of a challenge for him.
And this is Wooden Stick, so a lot of times on this podcast we like to go back to where it all began. But where did your passion for the game start?
1967 at the Metropolitan Sports Center. No, yes. I take that back. 68. It was 68. My first game, it was the North Stars and Rangers. I was there with my older sister, and I had never seen anything like it before in my life. And I was hooked on it from that point forward, and just I could click off the heroes I had when I was a kid. But since it's Wooden Sticks, I'll tell you my Bill Goldsworthy story. Because Bill Goldsworthy, number 8, the Goldie Shuffle, everything. I mean, he was my guy, right? As I was a young North Star fan growing up. And we had seats that were right by the tunnel. And one night after a game, Goldie broke a stick, and I got it. And I thought, man, this is a great treasure for me. I'm never going to lose this stick. But I was, I don't know, 10 years old. I took it out in the street and broke it, playing with it in the street. So there goes that great Christian Brothers stick that I was so proud of. I think I had it for about 4 days.
And, again, the Met Center was such a special place. My first taste was maybe a couple years later, early 70s. The California Golden Seals were in town, and we had seats right up on the glass. And Jules Malash happened to be the goalie that night, and I was a little goalie at that time playing mite hockey. And, I didn't know at the time, but he'd be a fixture with the North Stars in years to come after going to Cleveland and then having the Barons merge with the North Stars. But it's funny how that first trip to an NHL arena, the impact it can have on you as a young person. And had you told me, Dave, that decades later I'd be doing this for a living and getting paid to watch NHL hockey rinkside every night, I would have told you were nuts. I mean, I would have thought I won the lottery.
Yeah, that's me too. I remember one night, and I could fill you with 100 stories, but one night we were playing the Red Wings, the Stars were playing the Red Wings, and my dad was a great chirper. Man, he was a great chirper. And Gordie Howe laid a hit on somebody, I don't remember who, and my dad did not like it. And my dad was close enough that he had Howe's ear, and he, hey, Howe, cheap shot, Howe. That was a cheap shot. And I'm like, oh my God, my dad's chirping Gordie Howe. And Gordie Howe turns around to my dad and says, you want to do something about it, fat face? And I'm like, oh, good Lord, here we go. Fortunately, it didn't get beyond that, but yeah, that was one of my great memories there too.
Well, that's an era too. Like, people forget, and I think a lot of the younger folks that live now don't understand that, back in the 70s, like, this happened even into the 80s, where there were brawls that led to players climbing the glass and into the stands. Like, that was not unheard of in that era.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, there's the famous Boston Bruins situation.
Yes.
I was at Met Sports Center when Henry Boucher got popped in the eye with the butt end of the stick. Changed his whole career, obviously, and that was a horrible scene at Met Sports Center. But that was the game back then, right?
It was. And I teed up our listeners with the in our intro the fact that you were a college student at UW Eau Claire, where 2 of my daughters have and are attending college. Beautiful place. But for our listeners, give us some of your ties to Minnesota, because I think people that love the NHL know that you work for the Blue Jackets, you work in Ohio, but you've got all kinds of ties to Minnesota.
Well, yeah, I was born in Red Wing and moved to Le Sueur. So I had a couple small town experiences for a while, and then my parents moved to Edina in 1964, I think it was, and grew up in the Twin Cities. Huge North Star fan, huge Twins fan even today, and I got to sit here in Ohio and listen to these damn Guardians fans. They drive me crazy. Big Vikings fan as well, hoping that they can find a way now that they've lost their quarterback. But I was at the 1975 NFC Championship game at the Met, where the Cowboys stole one from the Vikings. They should have gone to the Super Bowl. So my Minnesota sports history runs deep. And in Hopkins, there's Maetzold Field, which is named after my great uncle, who was a great coach at Hopkins back in the day when those coaches coached everything. He coached football and basketball and track, even golf. He coached all those sports, and they named the field after him. So I say they named it after me because I played soccer there for a couple of seasons.
Well, we know you were a great athlete. I've seen you running around that arena. down at Nationwide. You're quick on your feet still to this day. And what was it about broadcasting? As you kind of started to figure out your career path, what led you to where you are now? And you've done this for a long time.
Well, it's a funny story, Kev. I'm not sure if I've ever told you, and this is going to take your listeners who are a little bit older back to the days of the O.J. Simpson trial. Now, what's the connection there? All right, so when I was at Eau Claire, I had a roommate by the name of Cato Kalin.
Oh my gosh.
Cato Kalin was interested in broadcasting. He was from Milwaukee, and he was interested in broadcasting. And he talked me into doing a sports radio show with him on the campus radio station.
Huh.
So we did a sports radio show together, and then they had a real rustic old like cable TV channel that was just in the dorms. And we took that show onto the cable TV channel in the dorms, and I decided that's what I wanted to do for my career. So I started on that path, and Cato went out to California to try to be famous, and we all know what happened to him.
That's unbelievable. And it's funny because, as the years go by, and I think this is year number 19. I know you've been with the Jackets, I think, since 2010. There is the excitement level for the new season. There's the unknown of, again, both of our clubs, I think, have been kind of middling and just fighting and clawing. And there's been some playoff success. There's been excitement. I hope we both get to experience a cup run, because I gotta tell you the truth, Dave. When I see our other counterparts out there, I look at the St. Louis Blues a couple years ago and Colorado. These are teams that here in Minnesota we see a lot of, right? So you get to know the broadcast team so well. We're so good, I think, at sharing what's going on with each team before Ed morning skate. I get a little jealous. I'm not going to lie to you. I want a cup run so bad. What would it be like for you and Columbus to experience that? Because I know, having been down there enough, what a great sports town that is.
Yeah, and I can take you back to their first playoff win over Pittsburgh when the roof came off Nationwide Arena, and then their first series win when they beat Tampa, when the big upset in 2019. Nobody expected that, and the way this fan base responded to that, and that was just a first round win. I can only imagine what it would mean to the long suffering diehard fans of the Columbus Blue Jackets to make a run, just get to the conference finals. They don't even need to get to the cup final, just so they could experience what it's really like. We've never had a game 7 here, Kevin, never had a game 7 at all. And I think if this fan base were to experience that, they would understand the magic of the National Hockey League and what it means to go deep into the playoffs like that. Obviously, it's a Buckeye town here. The Buckeye football team will always pull the sports train here in Columbus, Ohio. But I think the Columbus Blue Jackets could be right there on their heels if they experience some sustained success.
Yeah, I think we kind of live that, very similar fashion here. The Vikings will always be the big dog in this town. And I know we talk about the state of hockey, and hockey is very prevalent here, and it's great. But the Vikings are the team that moves the needle more than any other team. However, when the Timberwolves had their run last year, this became a Timberwolves town. When the Wild have had playoff success, and I go way back to 2003 when they got to a conference final, this place was nuts. And I lived through 2 North Star Cup runs where literally they own the town. So I think there's some similarities there for sure. In your travels, and again, when you do our job, I think it's changed a little bit since COVID, but we did a lot before the pandemic, Dave, where if our team was down a couple of goals after period 2, we'd try to slide down to the other locker room and hear from someone from the opposition. That kind of went away after that COVID break, but I vividly remember a couple interviews where I had the chance to talk to Sidney Crosby, and I was shaking in my boots. You have chemistry with your own guys. You have that relationship. And when you have somebody of Sid's magnitude, and I'm a Crosby lover, I kind of freaked out. Have you ever had any of those moments?
Well, I'll give you my Sid story, and it was last year. Our play-by-play guy, Jeff Rimmer, retired, and he has a grandson whose name is Crosby. And he wanted his grandson to meet Sidney Crosby. So here we are, one of our last home games, and here's Sid Crosby coming down to meet the grandson of our play-by-play guy before a game, mind you, before a game. Took all sorts of time with him, signed his stick, signed his puck. And after it was all over, I just went over and I shook his hand. I'm like, Sid, that was really great what you did for that young man. And he thought it was nothing, like no big deal. Happy to do it. And I think that's the kind of superstars that the National Hockey League produces, to be honest with you. Going back to some of the conversation we had earlier in the podcast, these guys don't have the gigantic egos, and they don't have that sense of, well, I don't have time for you. It's quite the contrary. And you look at a guy like Sidney Crosby, who would take time like that to meet with that young man. It really says a lot about him and a lot about the type of players that play in the National Hockey League.
And I think the game's in a good place right now. I look at how the playoffs unfolded this past year that went into summer, which they always do. And I look at the Cup final and the amount of national coverage that this game is finally getting. And as much as it pains me to see one of our conference rivals, the Oilers, in the mix, I think it's so good for hockey that a guy like Connor McDavid was front and center. And then you look at the other side where the Panthers had been there in back-to-back years, and they have all those great personalities from Tkachuk through their goaltender, who Bobrovsky, and their head coach, Paul Maurice. I just thought from a just 30,000-foot level, looking down at it as someone that wants the game to do well at the NHL level, I thought we got a lot out of the playoffs last year.
Yeah, and especially that final, the way that thing played out, obviously with Florida jumping out to the big lead and Edmonton coming back, you got a non-traditional market there in South Florida that's trying to win the Cup, and a Canadian team that's trying to represent the entire country and finally end their drought. I think that really added to the drama, added to the storyline, and had a lot of people paying close attention. And then you add in the superstars on top of that, and the way they were playing, the fact that they were trying to lead their teams, almost drag their teams into that Cup final, and I think that really added to the intrigue of that final and the way it played out. And frankly, I wanted to see Edmonton win it because it's been so long for Canada, and I think that a guy like Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, those two guys have waited so long, and I would have liked to have seen that drought end. But maybe this year they're going to be a favorite again this year for sure.
Yeah, they are, and I think now that they've got Draisaitl signed on again, they've got the band back together, and they proved again last year. I mean, if they get just league average goaltending with their weapons, they're going to be a factor when it counts, and they've got guys that can take over a hockey game. And I think Florida, they were the better team, and they kind of let Edmonton back in it. But now back-to-back years where they've gone to the Cup final, I think it's really hard. It takes a lot out of these teams, and they play such a physical brand of hockey, and they've got some guys that are on the back nine of their career. I would expect somebody new in the East almost for sure, where, the West, it wouldn't surprise me if the Oilers got back there.
Yeah. Yeah, and you talk about the East. I frankly thought the Rangers were the team in the East this year, this past year, and I think they might be again this coming season. Shesterkin's so good. They've got all the pieces. Panarin is so good, such a great playmaker and a good goal scorer. And they got a guy like a Chris Kreider, who I think every team has to have. You have to have that nasty guy who's going to park his big butt right in front of the net and score goals, and also, not be afraid to drop the mitts if you have to. I think you have to have those types of elements to get that far.
Totally agreed. And we've got that guy in Joel Eriksson Ek. I mean, we've got a guy that will get under the skin of about just about anybody. And I think, the Wild have, I think, a good core right now on this roster. But, last year, the goaltending, specifically our younger guy, Philip Gustafsson, wasn't probably up to par, and we had injuries. And they're just, Dave, in this league, there just isn't room for error. And if you don't get decent goaltending and you're missing 2 or 3 key players in this day and age, you're going to get exposed. And the Wild had way too many stretches where they lost 6 out of 7, and you just can't do that.
Yeah, we've had back-to-back seasons of giving up among the worst in the league in terms of goals against. And Elvis Merzlikins has got to be better. I mean, there's just no way around it. He's sitting on a fat contract right now. He was the choice when it was down to between him and Jonas Korpisalo, and they went with Elvis, and they gave him the big paycheck, and he just hasn't delivered on it. And it's really hurt the progress of this team. It really has. And they, there was a lot of talk about, do you buy him out? Do you try to move him somehow? Nobody wants that contract with the numbers that he's been producing the last couple of years. So our new general manager, Don Waddell, just said, look, I'm going to play him. I'm going to make him earn his paycheck, and let's see what happens.
Yeah, and I think he does have talent. I've watched him, and I do from afar believe the potential is there. And I just think with goaltenders, it takes a lot longer for it to click. And I think a lot of Wild fans were disappointed that Minnesota didn't move Gustafsson because of the year he had. And I remind people that this guy's still in his early 20s. Like, goaltenders don't peak until they're closer to 30. Look at who just won the cup. I mean, Bobrovsky's been there and done that. Like, it took him a while to get where he is. And some guys, I just think at that position, Dave, it takes a little longer for them to figure it all out. And I think you can still play that position like Marc-Andre Fleury is showing us later in your career, 35, 40 years old. We saw it with Lundqvist. So I think be a little patient, and I think playing the heck out of the guy might be a good thing.
Yeah, and you talk about Bobrovsky. He had some real rough post seasons to get started, to the point where at one point it was suggested that he needed a sports psychologist after an early exit in the first round. And Bob didn't take too kindly to that. And Bob certainly let the Columbus Blue Jackets know that fact after he won that cup last year, that he did not need a sports psychologist. That point was very much proven by the fact that he was hoisting that cup over his head.
But he had to go through some struggles, and he finally got to the promised
really
land,
did.
and it was fun to watch. So what do you do to get away? Because, in our job, you've got to do the work leading up to the game. You've got to be at morning skate. You got to get this guy. You got to get the coach. You got to get the right sound bite. Then the game starts, and you're on. What do you do to get away from all of that excitement? To, like, when you're traveling on the road, what are some things you like to do to chill a little bit so you can bring that energy come game night?
Well, I'd love to get out if we have time in any given city. I love to get out and explore the area around it. When we're in Denver, for example, I love to go up to Rocky Mountain National Park if we have a day. When we're in Calgary, I love to go out to Banff, and I've taken now. So people now know what I do, so I get as many members of our travel party as possible. We go out and we skate on Lake Louise, right? Because we can. So that's fun. My wife usually will join us for one trip on the road, which is always fun. And we're already looking at maybe a California adventure this year. So I just try to understand the experience and the opportunity that I have, Kev. You have it too, right? To
Yeah.
go to these cities, see these great places throughout North America. And I just don't want to sit in a hotel. Those hotels all look the same. If you can get out a little bit and explore, it really is enriching and really one of the nice perks of the job.
Couple summers ago, my lady friend Chrissy and I took a trip to Banff, and I will tell you, it was the middle of July, one of the most spectacular places I have ever been. We went to a glacier and did a tour there. We stayed at Lake Louise. We canoed. We hiked. I got to tell you, Banff is spectacular. If people have the opportunity and they're listening to this show and you can get to Banff, and I know you'll agree, there is something magical about that area.
Yeah, we had one year, I think it was the COVID year actually, 2020, where because of the way the schedule worked out, we were able to take the whole team and stay in Banff at that Banff Springs Hotel.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a hockey academy there in Banff that's run by none other than Gary Unger, the old Minnesota North Star nemesis. He used to be a nemesis to the Stars when he played with the Blues. And I had a chance to meet him, and I said, Gary, I got to tell you, when I was a kid, I didn't care for you too much because the Blues would find a way to beat the North Stars too often. But just back to Banff, it's an absolutely beautiful trip, winter or summer.
Yeah, it is spectacular, and that's the beauty of our gig. Like, my daughters and I had this conversation here a couple weeks ago. We were taking a boat ride out here and just kind of talking about the season ahead, and they said, "What's your favorite part of the job?" And I said, "Well, I mean, being around the players is great. Being with, getting to know the coaches and fostering that relationship is great. But I said, truthfully, girls, I said, so lucky to have the travel. Like a lot of these places, I never would have taken the time or the money to go to. And every NHL season, I get to visit all these cool places. And more often than not, as you mentioned, we get a day or even a half day where we can walk around. And I saw your video, walk around Washington, D.C., walk around Vancouver, which is spectacular. Yeah. It is such a privilege and such, I think, a benefit of the travel's hard. Don't get me wrong. Like, it's a grind, but boy, the best part of it is getting to walk around and see these cities.
Yeah, no question. And Vancouver, my goodness. I mean, People
Oh,
ask all the time, what's your favorite city? My answer has not changed in 15 years. I love going
no.
to Vancouver and going around Stanley Park. I'll do it again this year. I just love it.
Well, that leads us right into the hat trick hot seat here at the end of the conversation, where I'm going to throw three quick questions at you, Dave, and there's no wrong answer. It's more about your passion or your love or affection, therefore. And I'm going to start with this one. And I've got a distinct answer in my mind. But when you're on the road traveling, what is your favorite NHL arena to work in? And it can't be Columbus, obviously. So, working in a specific building, what is your favorite?
I'm going to go with MSG, and here's why.
Yes.
I think not only the history of the building, but I tell people no matter which team is their favorite team, you got to be in MSG when the Rangers score a goal because there's nothing like their goal song and the whoa, whoa.
Yes.
It's just fantastic. So that's my favorite arena by far.
You know what? You and I are, God, we are similar creatures because that is my number one with a bullet. And I love the goal song. I also love the old school PA guy when they're coming down the tunnel and all he stops and pauses and says, ladies and gentlemen, the New York Rangers.
Yeah.
And it's just it's an iconic building where I don't care if you're playing in the middle of January on a cold winter night on a Tuesday, right? A nondescript, interconference game. Here come the Wild. The Rangers probably don't even care about who they're playing. There is just something about that building that makes it feel like the game is far bigger than it probably is.
Yeah. And when you go into that building with rookie players on your team, the first thing
Mm-hmm.
they do, they come up that long tunnel, that elephant walk up to the ice level, and they walk
Yes.
up to the Zamboni tunnel and they look up at the roof, right? They look at the ceiling because it's so iconic.
It is. There is, for me, it's not even close. Like I love Chicago. I love Calgary and the Saddle Dome and that energy in that building. There's a lot of places I enjoy working. Boston Garden, I call it Boston Garden, TD Garden. But there is just MSG for hockey fans that are listening. If you can get on the road and go see a game there, you will not be disappointed. So I don't know how much you love music, but I think because of our similarities in background and age and where we grew up, I'm super curious for your answer here. Your first concert, who was the band? What was the venue?
Yeah, it's so funny. It was at the Metropolitan Sports Center. It was the Edgar Winter Group. Don't ask me why. It was the Edgar
Ooh.
Winter Group. That was my first concert. Not my best concert, but it was my first one.
Well, I share the same venue. I saw in the early 80s at the Met Sports Center, Brian Adams was the warm up and Journey was the featured band.
Oh,
And
yeah.
that was a good place to start. In fact, I'm still going to see Journey. I went and saw them a couple weeks ago at Target Field outside. And even though they're a different looking band without Steve Perry, they're still my favorite band. And it takes me back to that first concert at Med Center. Okay, final one in the hat trick hot seat is a travel destination that you have not yet been to that is on your bucket list. It's somewhere you need to get to before it's all said and done.
Oh boy, there's a lot of places in Europe where I'd like to go. I'll tell you that. And in my fantasy European trip, to be honest with you, my bucket list fantasy trip would be to go to France to see a stage of the Tour de France, and then
Oh.
and then somehow get to wherever the British Open is being played to see at least one round of the British Open. It doesn't have to be St Andrews. It can be anywhere. Ireland, Scotland, can be anywhere. But that would be my fantasy trip, would be to go to France and see a stage of the tour and then jump over to somewhere in Great Britain and see the British Open.
Yeah, I have a similar bucket list item, and for me, the Tour de France wasn't on my radar, but I've always wanted to attend the Open Championship. It's just such a different looking golf course, whether it is the old course or anything around on that circuit. It is just it's one of my favorite sporting events every year to watch because we get up so early in the morning. They're playing basically overnight. They finish by noon. And then we don't see golf like that here in the States at
Right.
all. And I'm a huge golf fan. So we share that same spot on that bucket list. And, I'm excited because today it just felt like another morning skate where you and I were connecting. I learned some things, the Met Center story, the Henry Boucher part of it. But bottom line is I can't wait to see you for opening night. And I know you guys, Dave, are going through a tough time right now. And I truly am thinking about you guys, and I appreciate you taking some time out of your schedule right now with what you're going through to do the show today.
Well, I love connecting with you, Kevin, and talking Minnesota sports is always great for me. I'm struggling with my Minnesota Twins right now. They're 4.5 back. The Guardians are going to get them. It's just driving me crazy. But always happy to talk with you, and especially always happy to talk hockey with you.
Really appreciate the time. That's Dave Maetzold, of course, Bally Sports Ohio, and the Columbus Bluejackets. We will all get together again in early October in St. Paul, and I'll be right back here to close the show on Wooden Sticks. And we are back on Wooden Sticks, and you could tell from the tone in Dave's voice just what a struggle this is going to be for the Blue Jackets. And outside of the 2 times the Wild play them in the opening couple weeks of the season, I'll be cheering for them, and I'll be cheering for Dean Evason. I hope they have a chance to come together as a hockey team and have some success this year and heal as a group. I mean, I'm certain a lot of those players in that locker room are really going to be hurting for a long time, and it's a void they can never, ever fill with the loss of such a great leader, such a great player, and such a great person in Johnny Gaudreau. So tragedy, no doubt about it, but with Dean Evason calling the shots, I am confident that they're going to get back up on their skates and find a way to have some success. The Stadium Series game looks awesome with the Red Wings and the Jackets playing at Ohio Stadium, home of the Buckeyes. I can't wait to watch that. And then just see how the whole thing unfolds. We're just a little over a month away from real hockey. We're a couple weeks away from training camp. I've already secured our guest for next week. He is one of my close friends and real good guys in the game of hockey, Tony Granato. I am certain through his many, many years, not just in the coaching business, but being an NHL alumni, being a United States hockey player, former Olympian, that he has a connection to Johnny Gaudreau as well. The Granato family, so many different ties to the game of hockey. I played high school hockey with his younger brother, Donnie, but Tony and I have known each other for years. In fact, it goes back to when he was playing with the LA Kings and was roommates with Wayne Gretzky. And there was a morning where they were playing at the Met Center, and I actually called a little too early to get my pass into morning skate to see Tony, where I woke up Gretzky, and that didn't make him very happy. So I'm looking forward to connecting with Tony G next week. And he's in the middle of a great fight, and he's battling cancer. He's gone through chemotherapy, and just connected with him at a charity event about a month ago. And, really fun to see Tony and, just chat him up and see how well he's doing. He's kicking ass. He's a tough guy. Like Johnny Gaudreau, a smaller sized NHL player, and play with a ton of grit, and had a lot of success. I mean, Tony Granato was a hell of a hockey player, and just a great person to chat with. So he'll be on the show next week, and we kind of inch our way closer to when the season starts. And as I mentioned a couple times earlier, looking to have some luminaries on once training camp gets started from the Minnesota Wild, including their general manager, Bill Guerin. So you can tweet at me at Gorgamatic21 if you have any suggestions for guests that you'd like to have on the show. And again, one last reminder, Andrew Whitey is now running the show in terms of advertising, AHEYDT at talknorth.com if you want to get involved. This is Wooden Sticks. I'm Kevin Gorg. Thank you so much for listening to the show this week.